At 8:46 a.m. on a Tuesday morning in September 2001, a structural engineer named Frank DeMartini was sitting at his desk on the 88th floor of the North Tower. He had spent the last 2 years of his life managing construction and renovation projects inside the building he loved. In a documentary filmed just months before, he looked directly into the camera and said the towers were designed to withstand the impact of a jetliner, multiple impacts in fact. He described the structure like a mosquito net absorbing a pencil. He was calm. He was credentialed. He was correct in theory. Frank DeMartini was not accounted for after September 11th, but in the 102 minutes between the first impact and the final collapse, he guided at least 50 people to safety through smoke-filled corridors he knew better than anyone alive. That detail, a man using documented structural knowledge to navigate a building in the process of defying that same knowledge, is not a footnote. It is the entire paradox at the center of this case. This is not a story about conspiracy. This is a forensic examination of a system failure, an intersection of structural physics, communication breakdown, and documented institutional error that the 9/11's Commission itself described as a catastrophic intelligence and operational collapse. The facts are on record. The transcripts exist. The engineering data is peer-reviewed. And when you lay them end to end, a picture emerges that is more disturbing than any alternative theory, because it is real, it is documented, and it was, in several critical ways, preventable. Let's build the timeline from the ground up. The World Trade Center's Twin Towers were not ordinary buildings. When they were completed in 1972 and 1973, they were the tallest structures on Earth. The engineering was radical for its time, a tube frame design where the exterior steel columns carried the majority of the load, rather than a traditional internal skeleton. The architect, Minoru Yamasaki, and the structural engineers at Worthington, Skilling, Hell, and Jackson deliberately engineered redundancy into the system. The building was designed to redistribute load if columns were compromised. The 1945 crash of a B-25 bomber into the Empire State Building, which the structure survived, was cited as precedent. The towers were, by every technical benchmark of the era, over-engineered. That matters, because what happened on September 11th did not just defeat the structure, it exposed a specific and narrow vulnerability that the original design team almost certainly never modeled. At 8 hours 46 minutes and 40 seconds a.m., American Airlines Flight 11, a Boeing 767-200ER, carrying 92 people and approximately 10,000 gallons of jet fuel, impacted the North Tower between floors 93 and 99, traveling at a documented speed of 443 miles per hour. The aircraft's wingspan sliced through the exterior column grid on the north face. The initial impact ended the lives of an estimated 1,360 people instantly or within minutes, everyone above the impact zone and those in the direct impact path. The floors below the strike zone were structurally intact. Stairwells A, B, and C theoretically provided egress. Theoretically. Here is where the first documented anomaly enters the record. Stairwell A in the North Tower, the one stairwell that later investigation confirmed remained passable for a significant period after impact, was not communicated to occupants. The Port Authority's own after-action analysis and the NIST report published in 2005 both document that building personnel did not have accurate, real-time information about which egress routes were viable. The fire alarm system in the North Tower had been placed in a non-evacuation mode following a 1993 bombing, in which a premature alarm had caused panic. That decision, made 8 years prior, meant that on the morning of September 11th, the automated alert system did not immediately broadcast a full evacuation order. Occupants in the South Tower, which had not yet been struck, received a message over the public address system advising them to return to their floors. The message was delivered at approximately 8:58 a.m. 12 minutes later, at 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 impacted the South Tower. 16 minutes. That is the window between the first impact and the second. 16 minutes in which the South Tower's 18,000 occupants were in a building that was not yet on fire, not yet compromised, and not yet a target, and a significant number of them were told, via official channel, to stay. The 9/11's Commission report dedicates an entire section to this sequence. It does not soften the finding. It states, in documented language, that the decision to advise South Tower occupants to return to their floors was made by Port Authority, personnel who did not yet have confirmed intelligence that a second aircraft was inbound. The decision was not malicious. It was made under the assumption that the North Tower impact was an isolated incident, possibly a small aircraft accident, as had occurred at the Empire State Building in 1945. The institutional memory of that event and the operational protocol built around it collided directly with a scenario it was never designed to handle. Now let's go back to the structural data, because this is where the physics becomes critical. The NIST investigation, a 3-year, $16 million forensic analysis conducted by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, concluded that the towers did not collapse due to direct impact damage alone. The aircraft strikes were survivable by the structure, consistent with DeMartini's documented assessment. What NIST identified as the primary collapse mechanism was thermal degradation of the floor truss systems. The jet fuel, burning at temperatures estimated between 1,000 and 1,100 degrees Celsius, heated the steel floor trusses to a point where they lost sufficient load-bearing capacity and began to sag. As they sagged, they pulled inward on the exterior columns. The exterior columns, already partially compromised by impact damage, were then subjected to lateral inward force in addition to vertical load. The result was a progressive collapse, a term engineers use to describe a failure cascade, where each compromised element transfers its load to adjacent elements until the system exceeds its total capacity simultaneously. The North Tower stood for 102 minutes after impact. The South Tower struck lower, at floors 77 through 85, with more of its core compromised, stood for only 56 minutes. Here is the breadcrumb that was planted at the beginning of this case, and it now pays off. Frank DeMartini's documented knowledge of the building's internal structure. He knew where stairwell B was. He knew which corridors were passable. He used that knowledge in real time to navigate people out of a building that the official communication system had failed. Of the roughly 18 people who escaped from above the North Tower's impact zone, the majority did so through stairwell B, the one route that remained marginally passable due to the specific geometry of the impact. DeMartini guided people to it. He went back in. The building came down at 10:28 a.m., his last confirmed location. Per witness accounts cross-referenced in the 9/11's Commission record, was the 89th floor. The communication failures on September 11th were not limited to the buildings. The 9/11's Commission also documented a critical breakdown between NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, and the Federal Aviation Administration. When Flight 11 was confirmed hijacked at approximately 8:25 a.m., FAA notification procedures required escalation through multiple command layers before NORAD could be officially tasked. By the time NORAD received confirmed notification and began scrambling intercept fighters from Otis Air National Guard Base in Massachusetts, Flight 11 had already impacted the North Tower. The fighters were approximately 71 miles away when the South Tower was struck. They did not have authorization to engage under the standing rules of engagement at that time, and the Commission confirmed they would not have reached the aircraft in time regardless. This is the documented operational reality, a system designed for Cold War threat vectors, Soviet bombers approaching from outside U.S. airspace, encountered a threat that originated from within the domestic air traffic network. The radar signatures, the communication protocols, the intercept procedures, none of them were calibrated for this scenario. The NIST report, the 9/11's Commission report, the FEMA World Trade Center Building Performance Study, and multiple peer-reviewed structural engineering analyses all converge on the same documented conclusion. The collapses were physically explainable, operationally foreseeable in hindsight, and the product of a specific combination of design constraints, fuel load, thermal dynamics, and system failures that individually would not have been fatal, but in sequence were unsurvivable. 2,977 people were removed from the equation that morning. Not a statistic. Each one of them was a Frank DeMartini, someone with a job, a credential, a documented life, who walked into a building that was supposed to be engineered to protect them. The structural engineers who designed the towers did not fail. The physics performed exactly as the post-analysis predicted it would under those specific thermal conditions. What failed was the space between the systems, the communication protocols, the evacuation procedures, the interagency notification chains, the institutional memory that told building staff to keep people calm rather than move them out. The 9/11's Commission identified 41 specific operational and intelligence failures in its final report. 39 of them were procedural. 39 of them were, in the language of the report itself, correctable. The question that this record leaves open, and that no document has fully resolved, is not whether the towers could have been saved. The physics makes that answer clear. The question is how many of the 2,977 could have been reached by a working system. NIST estimated that approximately 87% of the people in the towers, below the impact zones on September 11th, evacuated successfully. That number, in the context of 102 minutes and 50,000 building occupants, is a product of individual human decisions made in the absence of functional institutional guidance. Frank DeMartini was one of those decisions. The transcripts are in the public record. The engineering reports are indexed at nist.gov. The Commission report is available in full. The data does not require interpretation. It only requires the willingness to read it without looking away.